everyone. You're watching ARIRANG News. I'm Laah Hyun-kyung in Seoul. The stories we're tracking for you at this hour. A website analyzing the activities in North Korea says a nuclear test is not imminent in the north. Citing satellite images, it says only regular winter maintenance seems to be taking place. EU finance ministers agree on a near $340 billion investment program to revive the ailing European economy. The plan awaits EU lawmakers' approval. And a newly opened cultural center aimed at helping people realize their creative ideas is bustling with visitors. An estimated 8,000 people are expected to visit the center annually. We begin with satellite pictures of North Korea. The website of a U.S.-based think tank says Pyongyang is unlikely to carry out a nuclear test or missile launch over the next few months. Citing satellite imagery, the website 38 North says there are only signs of regular maintenance at North Korea's Punggye-ri nuclear test site and the Seoul satellite launching station. But it also notes that the North Korean leadership could move forward quickly with either a bomb test or missile launch if it wanted to. This analysis comes amid speculation that the North might carry out a provocation in response to the ongoing annual joint military drills between South Korea and the United States. North Korea sees those exercises as a rehearsal for war, while Seoul and Washington say they are purely defensive in nature. A top U.S. military officer says much more can be done to keep an unpredictable North Korea in check. This follows military talks between the U.S. and China, where Beijing officials were reluctant to talk about North Korea issues. Kim Hyun-bin reports.
The U.S. Army Pacific Commander General Vincent Brooks says North Korea came up in his discussions with Chinese military leaders during his recent visit to China. In an interview with the Brookings Institution's Order from Chaos blog on Tuesday, Brooks said he visited Beijing and Hainan last month and had meetings with China's top generals, but he did not elaborate on what the two sides said about North Korea. However, he did emphasize the need for dialogue between the U.S., China, South Korea, and Japan to formulate a coordinated policy to counter the North Korean nuclear and missile threat. Brooks said the regime's continual provocations and lack of transparency means there's always the potential for a military miscalculation. He added that, given North Korea's unpredictable nature, the Pacific Command remains on a so-called fight-tonight posture, and stressed that U.S. troops in South Korea are always on alert. In regards to the U.S. generals meeting in China, diplomatic sources in Washington say it's unlikely much progress was made on North Korean issues. They note that, in previous encounters, China has been reluctant to talk to the U.S. about North Korea, especially in regards to the North's leadership and internal changes inside the isolated regime. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News.
South Korea plans to impose sanctions on any company that complies with North Korea's recent unilateral wage hike at the Inter-Korean factory complex in Kaesong. Seoul's Unification Ministry says the government plans to outline the possible legal and administrative punishments if they hike wages in March. This follows Pyongyang's decision to up the monthly salary of North Korean workers at the industrial park by 5% to $74 US. The ministry says that if the measure is implemented, North Korea would earn almost $500,000 US in additional revenue from the complex. Seoul says it wants to hold talks with the North on the matter, but the call has so far gone unanswered. Senior diplomats from South Korea, China, and Japan will meet in about an hour in Seoul to lay the groundwork for a trilateral foreign ministers meeting slated for later this month. One of the key topics forecast to be on the agenda for that ministers meeting is to gauge the possibility of a trilateral summit a little further down the road. Korea and Japan both see the need for a leaders' summit, despite the numerous historical and territorial disputes among the three countries. China, on the other hand, is said to be less keen and is advising a more cautious approach. The trilateral foreign ministers meeting has been stalled since 2012 after Japan claimed sovereignty over the Senkaku Islands in the East China Sea, known in China as Diaoyu. Before wrapping up her two-day visit in Japan, German Chancellor Angela Merkel again urged Tokyo to address its wartime past and stressed the importance of reconciliation with its neighbors. Her remarks add to the mounting international pressure on Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. ARIRANG's Kim Ji-yeon has more.
During the second day of her two-day visit to Japan, German Chancellor Angela Merkel reportedly advised Japan to properly address the issue of the forced sexual enslavement of Asian women during World War II. Japan-based Kyodo News reports that Merkel emphasized the importance of reconciliation between Japan and Korea during her meeting with the leader of Japan's opposition Democratic Party, Kazuya Okada. Merkel added that it's important to face the problems of the past in response to Okada's concerns about a lack of reconciliation with Japan's neighboring countries, mainly Korea and China. A day before, she had urged Japan to face its wartime atrocities, referring to Germany's reconciliatory efforts after World War II. Merkel's latest remarks have been seen as a call for change and the lukewarm attitude currently taken by the administration of Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe toward acknowledging Japan's wartime atrocities. And she's not the only one pressuring Japan to offer an apology. Korea's foreign ministry spokesperson Do Gang-il said on Tuesday that the country expects Japan to build trust with its neighbors by making courageous efforts to face up to its history, just as Germany did after World War II. Also, U.S. Representative Mike Honda has said that Abe should not be allowed to appear before the U.S. Congress without repenting for the country's wartime history. In February, Abe had conveyed his wish to address Congress, and if he does, he will become the first Japanese prime minister to do so. Prime Minister Abe is set to issue a statement in August to mark the 70th anniversary of Japan's surrender in World War II, but there's speculation that he'll try to water down Japan's wartime atrocities. Kim Ji-yeon, ARIRANG News.
And staying in Japan, 4 years have passed since the country was hit with a massive earthquake and tsunami that destroyed 3 of the 6 reactors at the Fukushima power plant. The cleanup efforts have continued, but residents in the area still worry about radiation. Son Jung-in reports.
Life is gradually returning to normal in the disaster-stricken Fukushima region as workers continue their efforts to clean up the area and lower radiation levels. Kawauchi, located within 20 kilometers of the Fukushima power plant, is one of the villages that has had its evacuation advisory lifted since the meltdown disaster 4 years ago, but only 7 of its 274 former residents have decided to return. It's hard to say whether the town will ever be the same.
I've told my son to return to the village with his family, but I can't force them as it is ultimately their decision.
Over 117,000 former residents from Fukushima are reluctant to return home due to fears of high radiation levels. And the potential long-term implications, including cancer, are causing more concern. The number of children diagnosed with thyroid cancer is increasing in Japan, with more than 100 confirmed or suspected cases after tests of nearly 400,000 children. Before the disaster, there were just 1 to 2 cases of thyroid cancer in a million among Japanese children. Another concern is the treatment of farmland that remains contaminated with higher than natural levels of radiocesium in some regions. With no distinct plans to address the problem, efforts to decontaminate the soil are generating a massive amount of radioactive waste, which is packed into black bags and moved to temporary sites. Some Japanese people still remain doubtful about what the government is telling them about radiation levels and safety, saying the government has failed to protect them. Son Jung-in, ARIRANG News.
In the year 2012 for Korea was at its record high.
All of the day's important events close to home and around the world. Join Laah Hyun-kyung live from Seoul.
Shopping market thinks the true meaning of creation shines through. We take you now to Europe. A packed meeting of European finance ministers on Tuesday produced a green light for a $338 billion investment plan that will help revitalize the weak European economy. Shin Se-min has the highlights of that meeting.
A $338 billion investment plan will be launched to help the struggling European economy recover from its deep economic crisis. The four-year investment plan was approved during an EU finance ministers meeting in Brussels on Tuesday. If approved by the European Parliament, EU officials say the stimulus plan could be up and running by the end of the year. Under the plan, a $22 billion guaranteed fund will be set up, hoping to attract $338 billion through private investments. Slowly, financial pledges from Germany and France have been coming in, with the Eurozone's two leading economies, as well as Italy, each pledging $8.5 billion into the project, while Spain says it's going to put in $1.6 billion into the fund. The ministers also gave France an extra 2 years to bring its deficit below 3% threshold. It's the third time France has been granted an extension. The country now has more time to implement reforms and cut spending amid feeble economic growth and low inflation. France has been exceeding the EU's deficit target of 3% of GDP for 6 straight years. Greece's economic woes also came up. Germany's finance minister said Athens will receive no more aid until the country's international creditors are satisfied that it has delivered on its reform commitments. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
And shifting back to Korea, the country's economic recovery momentum is not strong enough, according to the finance ministry, which also points to a need for more stimulus measures. So the big question of the week is, will the Bank of Korea cut its key rate tomorrow? Here's ARIRANG's Hwang Ji-hye.
Korea's major economic indicators were all down this year. Output, consumption, and exports all plunged, while consumer prices would also have marked a drop if it were not for a tobacco price hike. The finance ministry is expressing concerns, saying the country's recovery momentum is still weak. It adds that lingering uncertainties abroad, like a weak Japanese yen and a possible rate hike by the U.S. Federal Reserve, also pose a threat to the domestic economy. To prop up growth, the government has announced a $9 billion stimulus package for the first half of this year and called on the corporate sector to raise their wage levels, which will in turn boost domestic demand. Given the efforts made by the government, market expectations are mounting for the central bank to cut its key rate in the coming months.
There's a high possibility that the Bank of Korea will cut the rate in April as it revises down its growth outlook for the Korean economy.
The Bank of Korea will set its key rate for this month on Thursday. Attention is now focused on the central bank's next move, as the prospect of another rate cut also prompts concerns about the country's snowballing household debt. Hwang Ji-hye, ARIRANG News.
Hyundai Motor is said to be planning on building a new factory in the U.S. to meet the demand for SUVs. The company hasn't confirmed it, but industry sources say the plant could have the capacity to produce up to 300,000 SUVs a year. Kim Min-ji has the details.
Hyundai Motor will reportedly build a new production plant in the United States as cheap gas prices coupled with the economic recovery is driving demand for SUVs in the U.S. market. Total SUV sales in the U.S. spiked 15% in the first 2 months of the year compared to the same period a year ago. Hyundai's popular Santa Fe model saw a 20% hike in sales to over 16,000 units during the same period. Industry sources tell Korea-based Jeonap news agency that Hyundai has finalized plans to build a new plant solely dedicated to its SUV lineup this year, with an eye on starting production in 2017. Hyundai currently has just one plant in the U.S. that only produces sedans. The sources say the plant located near Hyundai's current Alabama plant will have an annual capacity of 300,000 units. With 2 more plants planned in China and another currently under construction in Mexico, all with the same capacity, Hyundai and Kia Motors' combined total production output should top 9 million units by 2018, with overseas production accounting for 60% from the current 55%. Hyundai, however, has declined to officially confirm the report, saying nothing has been decided yet. Such a move could be seen as going against the Korean government's push to beef up facilities investment at home to boost domestic sentiment and job growth. Kim Min-ji, ARIRANG News.
Korea's Fair Trade Commission is rolling up its sleeves to stop large conglomerates engaging in unfair business practices against their subcontractors. The antitrust watchdog says it's in the final stages of setting up a section on its website where small and mid-sized companies will be able to anonymously report such practices. Until now, companies had to reveal their name as well as other information, including their contact number and email address when filing a complaint. The Commission says conglomerates' unfair business practices are rarely reported as subcontractors fear that they might be shunned and have their contracts terminated. Korea has once again been named as the country with the fastest internet connections in the world. Global statistics portal Statista says broadband internet speeds in Korea stood at around 25 megabits per second as of the third quarter last year, more than 5.5 times faster than the global average. Countries like Hong Kong, Japan, and Switzerland followed. Korea also has one of the highest internet penetration rates in the world, with 9 out of 10 Koreans using the net. And staying with the country, Korea is known for its high education fever, but its school children are under enormous stress. A report released by the Korea Institute for Health and Social Affairs measuring Korean children's education stress level shows that the index reached over 50%. This is 17 percentage points higher than the overall average and roughly 3 times higher than the Netherlands, the country with the lowest stress level. A higher reading indicates a higher stress level, of course. Countries with high education-related stress levels trailing behind Korea are Spain, Slovenia, and Portugal. Countries on the lower end include France and Germany. Now, there's a place called the Culture and Creativity Fusion Center in Seoul that recently opened its doors. Anyone can go to the center and use the equipment there free of charge to produce new content. Our Kim Young-gil takes us there.
In this studio, dancers' graceful movements are recorded by a computer using motion capture technology. With the digital 3D models that are created, people can study the choreography or create something new. Here, anyone who has the skills to shoot and edit films can come and make their own movies. At the new cultural center, people can do anything from produce records or a broadcast to make a film or performance. There's even one-on-one mentoring for anyone who's interested in creative work but needs a little advice. And the best part is that all of the facilities are available for free.
The government and entertainment companies are giving opportunities to people who are willing to do business in the cultural realm by providing them with such facilities.
The government is trying to help people who don't know how to start a cultural business by providing funding and consulting programs.
This culture center is part of the government's efforts to transform small ideas and the products of a creative imagination into commercial mass media products. The best creations will be sent to venture companies for production.
I hope the Culture Center will help Korea's cultural content industry to create a fusion of new ideas and the culture industry as we are lagging behind globally.
To broaden the platform for the development of new cultural content, the government plans to open a Culture and Creativity Academy by the end of 2016 for research and development programs and to foster new talent. By the end of 2017, the so-called K-Culture Valley will open with a multifunctional performance hall, a pop music-themed amusement park, and a Hallyu street where tourists can enjoy elements of Korean mass media and pop culture. Kim Young-gil, ARIRANG News.
And on to our next item. One of the most common sources of inspiration for artists is nature, and that includes animals. Today, Im Yoon-hee joins us for a look at a few artists who have created paintings based on some furry friends. Good afternoon, Yoon-hee.
Good afternoon. So I don't know about you, but when I was little, all of my artwork was based on the various different pets I had. But today I have a look at 3 different artists who are professional artists, and they get their inspiration from various different animals. Take a look in this next report.
French contemporary painter André Brasilier often looks to nature for inspiration, decorating his canvases with the beauty of flowers and trees. But there is one image that appears consistently in his works, and that's the majestic horse. The picturesque vision of Mother Nature puts the horse front and center, highlighting the relationship between humans and the animal.
The horse is the most human-like animal. It is very intelligent and understands feelings. This similarity to humans is one of the messages here.
Instead of horses, this artist puts a much smaller animal at the center of his attention. Renowned Korean artist Hong Tae-hoon has brought his famous Fly Roosters exhibition to Seoul after other exhibitions abroad. The series features mystical depictions of the bird, often shown mid-flight, an unusual sight for this animal. But there's a message behind the image that the artist aims to share.
With the current times, the ordinary person probably feels just like I do. I wish we could all fly away together. That's the picture I paint.
Another painter found her inspiration in one of the most common household pets. Yang Jung-hwa takes a more subtle approach to her canvas, creating works that echo the likeness of the lovable furry cat.
The last artist, Yang Jung-hwa, if I'm not mistaken, she's more famous for having cats kind of involved in her paintings.
Right. She actually does incorporate quite a few cats into her paintings and sketches. But she doesn't just stop at there. She has a very unique approach to her artwork with very contorted shapes and very strong shadowing and colors. And she does also do sculpture, so you can see that at the exhibition.
And the 2 artists before Yang Jung-hwa, I'm not so familiar with them. So can you tell us more about those artists?
Right. So the first artist, André Brasilier, he has had many exhibitions shown around the world. But with this particular exhibition, you see a lot of horses, but that's not just what he paints. He also does a lot of pictures of women and of music. He likes to incorporate music into his work. And the last artist, Hong Tae-hoon, he also has a very large exhibition. If you look, very different style, very strong, vivid colors, a little bit of an Asian element to his works, and you could also see that at the exhibitions.
I was expecting more like a puppy dog kind of images, but it was quite different, but still very artistic.
Artistic approach.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Yoon-hee, for bringing us this story today.
You're very welcome.
Hello, Michelle Park here with the latest weather forecast. The cool spell is slowly moving on out and the winds are calming down. However, the highs won't be making their way back up to the seasonal average, so make sure to dress warmly today. Now, sky is somewhat cloudier than yesterday. In fact, there is a possible chance of rain this afternoon here in the capital, which will move down south by the evening. And also the dry weather continues nationwide, so make sure to take care of yourselves by drinking lots of water. Now, temperatures are expected to rebound back to the seasonal averages by Friday, when the mercury will get up into the teens, leading us into a milder weekend, although rain is in the forecast on Sunday. Now, let's have a look at the readings for today. Seoul will peak up to 7 this afternoon, while Gwangju and Busan will get up to 10 and 11 degrees. Moving over to other regions, Jeju-Walling gets up to 9, Dokdo hits down to 4, while Mangkungang will be cloudy at -5 degrees. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
And that's a wrap from us at this hour. I'm Laah Hyun-kyung in Seoul. Thanks for watching. Another edition of ARIRANG News with me coming up at 4 p.m. Korea time.